Have you ever tried a pastry where the golden crust is so crispy it flakes off layer by layer like autumn leaves, while the inside stays soft and moist? The moment you bite in, a burst of rich cheese aroma explodes, with butter melting on your tongue, and every mouthful feels like happiness wrapping you in layers? Yes, I'm talking about the utterly addictive Danish cheese-filled ring, Wienerbrød. Known as Denmark's national treasure dessert, it's the star that always draws long queues at Nordic bakeries. But did you know? This laminated pastry didn't actually originate in Denmark, it was born from a cross-border baking revolution. Today on CHIU STYLE, I'll take you from 18th century European courts all the way to modern cafés, unraveling its mysterious history, cultural significance, fun legends, and even its global variations, piece by piece. Plus, I'll share a super little secret: pair it with our caramelized orange black tea. One bite of crispy pastry, one sip of caramel orange fragrance, sweet and tangy layers exploding in harmony. I guarantee you'll be sipping from morning tea to afternoon tea, unable to put it down. Ready? Let's embark on this fragrance-filled journey together. The story begins in mid-18th century Europe. In the 1740s, Vienna, capital of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was enjoying its golden age under Empress Maria Theresa. Inside the imperial court, master bakers invented a revolutionary lamination technique. They repeatedly folded the dough, spread it with butter, chilled it, then rolled it out again, dozens of times, to create a pastry that was light as a feather with distinct, airy layers. This was the original Wienerbrød, Vienna bread. Its roots trace even further back to traditional Austrian puff pastry methods, reportedly introduced in the 17th century by Croatian immigrants who brought techniques resembling milföy. But what truly made it shine was the late 18th century wave of migration. Starting in the 1780s, many Austrian bakers headed north to Denmark in search of opportunity. At the time, Copenhagen was on the cusp of the Industrial Revolution, the city was expanding rapidly, the middle class was rising, and demand for refined baked goods skyrocketed. These Austrian masters brought the Viennese formula: high butter content, sometimes up to 50% of the dough weight, yeast fermentation, and meticulous layering. Local Danish bread was mostly coarse rye. The Viennese version, richly aromatic and delicately light, instantly became a favorite among the elite. Historical records show that by the 1790s, Copenhagen cafés were already selling this imported miracle, and nobles even served it alongside tea at court balls. But the good times didn't last. In 1820, the Danish government, protecting local jobs, banned foreign bakers and allowed only Danish apprentices. The industry suffered, local trainees lacked skill, and quality plummeted. Then, in the 1850s, a massive apprentice strike erupted. In 1854, Copenhagen's bakery union launched protests demanding higher wages and better conditions, shutting down hundreds of bakeries. With no choice, owners reopened their doors and rehired Austrian masters. This time, the Danes didn't just copy, they boldly innovated. They increased butter, from 30% to 40 to 50%, added more eggs for moisture, and fine-tuned fermentation for even crisper, more distinct layers. In 1859, the first Danish-style Wienerbrød was born. It preserved the Austrian folding method, at least 27 layers, but delivered a crispier, more fragrant, softer texture. The Danes insisted on keeping the name Wienerbrød as a tribute to Austrian expertise. By the 1870s, it was a breakfast table staple, and bakers even formed guilds with strict standards. Butter had to be evenly distributed in every layer, and baking temperature precisely controlled at 200 degrees Celsius. From then on, it was no longer a foreign import, it became Denmark's baking pride. From this history, we can see that the Danish cheese-filled ring is far more than just a dessert, it's a product of cultural fusion. It took foreign techniques and transformed them into a uniquely Danish delicacy. This helps us understand why it has become an indispensable part of Danish life. In Denmark, bread isn't merely about filling the stomach, it's a way of life. Picture a morning scene, a family gathered around the table, the freshly baked laminated pastry releasing waves of buttery aroma. Danes start their day with this delicate warmth. The Danish pastry symbolizes the pursuit of quality and attention to detail. Every fold, every layer of butter meticulously applied, is a manifestation of craftsmanship. And this quest for perfection has become an integral part of Danish culture. In Denmark, Wienerbrød goes far beyond a mere dessert. It is a core element of hygge, the Danish concept of cozy, contented living. Hygge emphasizes warmth, comfort, and togetherness. By the late 19th century, this pastry had already woven itself into daily rituals. Historically, in 1880s Copenhagen, bakeries like the forerunner of Lagerhuset fired up their ovens at 5 a.m., filling the streets with buttery fragrance. Working-class families bought the simple round version, while middle-class households opted for filled varieties. On weekends, housewives recreated the lamination technique at home, a process taking 3 to 4 hours, but it was an act of love. In the early 20th century, as the Danish design movement took off, Wienerbrød was hailed as the pastry embodiment of functional aesthetics, simple yet refined in shape, with a balanced, non-cloying texture. In the 1950s, the Danish government even included it in national tourism campaigns as a cultural icon. Today, at Copenhagen's Torvhallen Market, you'll see grandparents teaching grandchildren how to pick the freshest, just-baked pieces, a true intergenerational tradition. Statistics show the average Dane consumes 8 kilograms of laminated pastry per year. It embodies the slow-living philosophy, no rushing, each fold requires at least 30 minutes of patient chilling. This craftsmanship has influenced IKEA's minimalist design and even Nordic coffee culture. A Swedish fika, afternoon coffee break, feels incomplete without Wienerbrød. When it comes to culture and daily life, it's not just the history that makes Danish pastry so captivating. There are also the fascinating stories of how it traveled the world and settled into kitchens everywhere. In the early 20th century, a legendary figure emerged, Laurits C. Kliting. Born in 1885 in a small Danish town, he apprenticed at age 15 in a Viennese-style bakery. In 1905, he immigrated to New York. By 1912, he opened Kliting's Bakery in Manhattan, sparking a Danish pastry craze. Then, in 1915, came a dramatic twist. President Woodrow Wilson remarried at the White House. Kliting was invited to create 500 custom Wienerbrød, filled with imported Danish cheese and shaped like hearts. Historical records note that Mrs. Wilson exclaimed, "This is the sweetest blessing Europe has ever sent." That day, the White House kitchen used 50 pounds of butter, and the aroma reportedly drifted all the way to Capitol Hill. The wedding made Danish pastry an overnight sensation. In the 1920s, Kliting toured Europe and America, teaching the lamination technique. By the 1930s, chains like the forerunner of Dunkin' Donuts began selling simplified versions. After World War II, waves of Danish immigrants brought it to Canada and Australia. In the 1960s, British supermarket Marks and Spencer introduced it as continental pastry. Amusingly, Danes chuckle when they hear Danish. In Denmark, it's still called Wienerbrød. This cross-cultural journey spawned countless variations. The American version adds icing, the Japanese cuts butter and boosts airiness. When it comes to true enjoyment, it's not just about looking and eating. Pairing with the right drink can elevate the entire taste experience. Imagine sitting by the window, sunlight spilling across the table, holding a steaming Danish cheese-filled ring. Flaky crumbs tumble down as you take a sip of caramelized orange black tea. Wow! The tea glows deep amber, caramel rushes the nose first, followed by a refreshing orange peel finish. Why the perfect match? The milk fat in the cheese resonates with the tea's caramelization, creating a silky harmony. The citric acid and orange zest cuts through richness, making the next bite of pastry even crisper and fresher. Brewing tip: use 95 degrees Celsius water, steep for 4 minutes, add a touch of honey for extra depth. Breakfast pairing: boosts energy. Afternoon tea: eases fatigue. Historically, Danes have always loved black tea with pastry. This combo is the modern upgrade. Sparkles, want to experience this perfect pairing yourself? Scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description to purchase our Caramelized Orange Black Tea and make every dessert moment bursting with fragrance. In summary, the Danish cheese-filled ring is far more than a delicious pastry. it carries 18th century Austrian migration, 19th century Danish strike-driven innovation, the 20th century White House wedding legend, and today's global variations. It embodies history, culture, craftsmanship, and the spirit of innovation. From the patient 27-layer folding to the bliss of one bite of pastry with one sip of tea, it bears witness to the endless possibilities of baking artistry. If you love content that blends history, food, and culture, don't forget to subscribe to CHIU STYLE, like, comment, share, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next episode uncovering more stories behind your favorite foods. Now, grab a Danish cheese-filled ring, take a sip of caramelized orange black tea, and let life turn sweet and joyful from the very first aroma. See you next time.